Hi everyone, thanks for joining us again for another policy podcast update. I'm here with Lydia Waligorski from CCADV, and I asked her to join us today to fill us in a little bit on what the CCADV primary bills are and kind of what's going on at the Capitol for Lydia. As most of you know, Lydia and I are kind of joined to the hip this time of year, so we support many of the same bills, but I thought that she could join us today and tell us a little bit about CCADV's primary bill, which is the medical mandated reporting bill. But first, I want to jump in to catch you up to speed because I know we missed each other last week, and I just really want to celebrate all the survivors and supporters who came out to testify for House Bill 1035, the Housing Protections Bill, because it passed unanimously.
Yeah, in a big way it passed.
It was a big win for survivors, so thank you everyone. We're on to the Senate next, and I will keep you posted on when that date will be and what type of testimony and all that good stuff, but it looks good, I think, and I know that many survivors came out to testify, to share their story, to shape state policy, so that we have survivor-centered state policy, and I'm very much appreciative of that. So on to the Senate. A couple of the things that I wanted to talk about were Senate Bill 128. That was the campus sex assault bill. That actually died in committee yesterday. We reached out to our campus folks and asked for feedback. We actually stayed neutral on that bill because there were some technical aspects that we didn't think would be implemented well, and there were some things that we really liked about the bill. So we couldn't find consensus and we ended up not testifying. But what I think is important to mention here is that campus sex assault, strengthening state statute for campus sex assault is something that we believe might be a priority in the upcoming years, particularly because of changes at the federal level. And for any of those who might have seen the confirmation hearing of Betsy DeVos, she was not able to give a clear and firm answer when asked about maintaining Title IX. And so we're going to keep an eye on that and see what happens at the federal level. But I think what might be a good idea for us moving forward is to really take a look at strengthening state statute for our campus folks and making sure that survivors on college campuses are safe and protected and are afforded the same things that they currently are under Title IX provisions. So more to come there. I also wanted to give a quick update about juvenile sexting. So I know this was like all we talked about together last year, and I feel as though maybe from this podcast moving forward, that will be all we talk about until the very last podcast. Lydia laughs because she knows it's true, and I think just to kind of fill you in on where we're at, there are two competing bills. The exact same bill that we killed last year with the exact same bill title and the exact same bill provisions and the exact same bill sponsors and the exact same bill proponents have brought that bill forward again. So we have the same concerns. And fortunately, this time, over the last year, we have been working with a broad group of stakeholders for an extensive and engaged stakeholder process. And we feel as though we have created a bill, a potential piece of legislation that takes into consideration all the nuances of juvenile sexting cases. And we think we have a really good product. So there are two competing bills. Neither is calendared yet. We believe the plan is to have both bills introduced on the same day to the same committee to give the committee kind of like a fair overview of what the policy problem actually is and what the two different policy solutions to that policy problem are. That way the committee can choose which they think is most appropriate fit for Colorado. Again, we're going to be talking about this much more throughout the legislative session, so we'll circle back to that. And I think that's it for me. So smashing success for our housing bill.
Yay.
I think we need to look at campus sexual assault, strengthening that state statute, those state statutes moving forward, maybe for our 2018 policy agenda, and sexting. More to come with sexting. So I'm going to turn it over to Lydia, and she's going to give us a little bit of information about her primary bill this session.
Absolutely. So CCADV has been working through a stakeholder process and working through listening to our memberships really for about the last 10 years to identify that there's been a problem with survivors' access to health care in Colorado. And so we want to give survivors a safe space to have a confidential conversation with their healthcare provider. Right now there's a mandate in place that says that a medical licensee has to call law enforcement once they treat a survivor for injuries resulting from domestic violence. And we know from our conversations with our members, and we know with everything that's going on in the world of immigration right now, that we have a lot of survivors that do not feel safe interacting with law enforcement at this point. Maybe they have an immigration status that they are concerned about. Maybe they've had an interaction or have been criminal justice involved before. And so for whatever that reason, we feel like having another safe space where you can have a conversation about what's going on in your life should happen with your healthcare provider. And so we want to repeal the mandate that requires medical licensees to call law enforcement when they treat somebody that has had domestic violence injuries. And so we are working to introduce a bill that would do that. And it's not yet been introduced, but we will certainly keep you updated and informed. Another real brief comment is that we had a bill pass for its first committee this last week, which was the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board bill. And this bill is actually being run by the Attorney General's office. So we create a statewide fatality review board to be housed out of the Attorney General's office that would take a look at domestic violence fatalities, do a review from birth on up to talk about life-generated risks as well as battery-generated risks, and find meaningful ways to intervene in those situations before they become domestic violence homicides. This coincided with the release of a Denver Post article yesterday that you might have seen that has shown that there's been a spike in known domestic violence homicides, at least in the city limits. And so we are working with stakeholders to make sure that this bill does successfully pass. It passed its first committee unanimously last night and will now go on to the House, where we do not expect many problems. But we're certainly supporting the Attorney General bill and creating this task force.
Great. Well, thanks, Lydia.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for the survivors and the advocates that are tuning in. We appreciate the work that you do. And Lydia and I think, are probably going to head to the Capitol. So we'll see you guys later.
Bye.